Good morning. Who's that? Hey, so a little bit late getting started here, 7 minutes in, and it's 7 minutes after 7 on the Pacific Coast. I got 8 o'clock in the Intermountain time here, and paradigm shift coming at you from the salt. And today we're talking about that one time in Mexico. No, not that time, but another time. And so today we're going to be discussing concepts of perception, and we're actually going to touch on things like multiverse and how we actually interact in it on a daily basis. And let's see. Once upon a time ago, and let me start with a preface of how I'm going to tie this to cannabis. And in recent discussions, I'm constantly promoting landrace growing, right? And for various reasons. And one of the greatest reasons is that we breed out a lot of stuff when we select for a singular thing. Okay, and this can be shown in multi tree in the world, but when it's initial inbreeding for commercial use, they bred for a 22-year cycle for harvesting, and naturally it would be between 50 and 100 years, right? And so they outbred disease resistance, and so they planted out hundreds of thousands of acres, and all these trees died, right? And so then they went back to work, and they discovered, hey, we got to go back to the native stock in Monterey. And so I've also pointed out that Pinus radiata has several different names, and depending on if it's been inbred or all those things, but it doesn't change that it's actually the same species. And different cultivars can have navel stores, and some of them are more for fiber, all of that same stuff. But that's a point in case. Now, we just had the poinsettia discussion, which is wonderful, listening to a whole nother plant and discussing how these professional poinsettia breeders actually go in, and they'll go to the Home Depot, they'll find their competitors' plants and find an excellent specimen, and these things are all cull and cuts, and they'll go ahead and take it and they'll make a sexual reproduction of it, and then if they can get a novel response, they go ahead and reproduce that, and that's how they're all competing. And the story went along, but he got to this point where it's like we have this problem with whitefly resistance. Okay, so we've lost whitefly resistance, and this is the exact same thing I talk about. So he says, yeah, we went back to where this guy has all the old specimens, all the land races are kept under lock and key, and they were afraid to even let me in because they thought I was going to steal them. And I happened to ask, like, do you got whitefly resistance? Like, oh yeah, we got whitefly resistance, right? And so, but the commercial industry here growing poinsettias, I see some beautiful ones the other day in the store that I just stopped and get some parts for draining a 32-gallon tank. Yeah, so this stuff is real time. It happens all the time. And then we can hear here on this channel and the Future Cannabis Project, we can hear people who call themselves breeders and say, hey, there's only 250 of us. This is where it gets funny. You're a pollen checker for growing landrace. Landrace is you might find something novel, but it ain't commercial, right? And like, I agree with all of that. And somebody might say, hey, that's not really a landrace that you're growing. That's somebody got some bag seed and inbred that landrace bag seed into a cultivar. Like, yeah, that's, if you watch my whole video on landrace, and I'm gonna do some of these paradigm shifts on landrace as well. I'll break that whole 5 hours of discussion in these 1 hour sessions. So it's there are these different levels of landrace. There's wild, right? There's the stuff that's gone feral. There's the stuff that's intermixing with cultivated fields, and there's the stuff that's been where we find bag seeds, and they're telling me like, that's not the way you do it, but that's how Mel Frank did it, and he's the man, right? It's like, so, and then they're complaining about like, oh, we're stealing each other's genetics, or so-and-so stole so-and-so's genetics, and you're all just hybridizing and mixing around these cut clones of the exact same stuff. And it's the same thing as the poinsettia guy. And I'm going, hey, look at the land races. Change up your name, right? Perceptions. understanding that there's all these different facets of reality. All right. And so that's the kind of stuff I really wanted to tie in. Oh, and one of the ones I heard that was so pertinent to why I say grow landrace. It's not just we can get form back, right? We can get stem strength. If you can find one that you've inbred a cultivar of this particular landrace to produce stem strength, and right, so you got to do that work, right? But it's really easy to just take other people's work and cross it up. That ain't doing a whole lot. Real breeding takes going in and taking that bad seed and bringing it into a cultivar and using those to mix up and bring those traits in, right? And so I don't even know who the people were talking in those. I can't see it on my phone or on the little side screen. It doesn't really matter because this is the group think that I refer to. And that's that group and that's the way they think, right? And I'm trying to say, hey, you just said you found a wild plant that like it didn't have the greatest flower structure, and when you smoked it, it was totally racy and it made your head spin, and it wasn't what you wanted as a cultivar that we smoked. It's like, no, it ain't. But that's one of those lost medicines. That's something that somebody can replace possibly insulin with. Okay, right? There's all of these things that it's like, oh, your mindset, your group think, your paradigm needs to shift. That thing was like, could have been something that was the medicine that saved people's lives in some disease that's like rare and obscure. Okay. And so it's, yeah, no, you got to go through thousands of seeds. It's rare. Chances are, but how'd they find the CBG plant? That was a scraggly little freaking thing that you would never, ever look at twice as a flower grower because it was so scrawny. But they didn't look at it as a flower grower. They looked at it through that chematography they talk about, right? And so they were able to find a plant that literally, and so here's these people saying we got to use chematography, but they didn't use it on the plant that could have been the one. So anyhow, I went on to a couple of stories from my past back when we had only, as a common consumer, we had sativa, which was brickweed, pressed in a can or whatever, whether it was coming up from Colombia or Mexico or wherever we were getting it from, or if it was triangle, greenbud, chronic, skunk, all those things got kind of mixed in to whatever's coming down from Northern Cal to where we were in SoCal, right? And again, back then, you'll hear me talk about my first time as a medicine man handing a joint to people throwing up on the fishing boat that I was cooking on, and deckhanding and stuff. And I was just the lowest slimes on deck. So I was the one that was told that you got to go out there and get this guy to burn the rope. And so again, if it was the brickweed, they stopped smoking or stopped puking immediately, right? But if it was a NorCal, they got sicker. And so these were those base differences that we're talking about. And you can take that super racy landrace and a wild, right, feral, whatever that was, and mix it back in to these super chronic go to sleep couch locks and create something that's in between. Right. And that's where the true breeding, in my opinion, occurs. Right. And dude said that, like, oh, Neville only said like he only found stuff through other people's work. And it's like, how much work was he doing? He's after the money. Well, so, and we all have these pathways, and theirs is the one they're on, and that's great. I just want you all who are listening. I don't have a Discord. I'm going to set up a Patreon too. Eventually, I'm just slowly, I spent half of yesterday up on the mountain recording melting snow sounds for a new channel I'm putting out that's going to be all meditations and stuff. That was a whole nother, I can tell this little story real quick too. I picked up my first hitchhiker since COVID started. And it was Giuseppe, and Giuseppe is Italian, and his English after being in America since he was a little boy is still pretty thick. And his first thing he says is, my mother used to tell me. It's like, no, I don't. It was like, and he says it in Italian, and like I have the slightest understanding of Latin, and I understand Spanish if you speak it slowly, but it was like you can't. I don't understand what you're saying if you don't say it. And so I'm like, oh, she's not telepathic, and he didn't understand what telepathic meant, and I couldn't describe it to him. And But he says, did you go skiing today? And for me, skiing is like the closest thing I can get to being one with the universe and God and cutting loose. Sometimes painting gets me there as well. But I told him what I was doing. I was recording the sound of melting snow. And he's like, oh, you sit with God. You're beside. And he said it and he tried to translate. And apparently there's something in Italian that's idiomatic. You can't translate back over. And that whole conversation was like, I go live in the valley and these people, they don't know what Alta is. And like, it's this beautiful place right up the hill. Why don't you go there? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm recording this for, is people so they can hear it here on the YouTube who never get to experience it and stuff. And just whole nother levels of looking at thinking and seeing different perspectives. And that's so leading into, and it ties back to what I just described about cannabis. There's as many versions of you as there are sentient entities who have encountered you. And in fact, your version of you is not the same as anybody else's version of you. Okay, so what you have perceived in your mind as to whom you are inside, and our thoughts and our perceptions of our abilities and our knowledge and such, right, does not coincide whatsoever with anybody else that encounters you in life. And then as we move through time, that's constantly changing, even who we are, our perception of who we are, and the ability for other people's perception as to who we are, right? So there's anybody you meet along the way. And here's going to be a couple of examples of this. We're going back into, it's 1987, I believe. And I go to a prep school, right? This is my father lived in at this time I think it was Tustin in Orange County, right? And he was affluent preppy, classic preppy. Drove the convertible Rabbit. He had actually I was driving the convertible Rabbit. He had a brand new Audi, and I've been saving money to buy a set of Congos, and I knew I could buy them in Mexico. I didn't know where. I just knew we drove from Orange County down to Mexico, and I had enough money in my pocket, and I was going to be able to buy some. My pop was master of haggling. We went to Mexico. As long as I can remember, we would go down there hunting and fishing to get protein. My father worked his ass off to become an affluent preppy. Right. He went to college. He studied hard. He became programmer, computer engineer. Right. He wasn't the slouch. He didn't inherit it, and he worked hard for his money and all. Right. So he was able to send me to this awesome school, and I got this amazing education. And so we would have these parties, and you might have heard me say this before. A lot of the parties required you had an invitation to get in. Maybe in South Pasadena, super affluent, always has been zone, right? Or other parts of Los Angeles. So, we were in inner city LA, literally gang warfare going on while we were in class and stuff for football practice. And people will come in from the satellite communities where there's affluency. And there was a few people from that local community, but very few. So it was coat and tie and invite only to get into these silver-studded parties. And so in South Pasadena one night, I'm walking along, and I am the hippie freak that I am, walking barefoot with a coat, no shirt, and tie with my buddies. And we'd parked around the corner, and we're heading to one of these parties. And out of the darkness, this glowing ember comes out to me right here. Let's see, there we go. Enjoy, smoke. And I take this doobie from the guy, and I put it in my lips, and I take a puff. My buddies all stop, like, what's going on here? And this fellow was like, man, I knew you was old school because you was walking barefoot, right? They're like, oh, good observation, man. So, all right. So that's one observation. One person had, and he saw my bare feet. Other people would not allow me in their freaking house. Right, like, you're gonna ruin our soil, our expensive carpets, blah 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 blah. Okay, there was certain homes that I literally, my best friends and I had to keep a pair of sandals or socks around so I could go in the home. So that's a whole other perception of my feet being bare back then. But here's where we get into this other story. Is as an affluent, semi-spoiled Chad of a kid, you might say, back then. just flipping back and forth from spiritual context and meathead football player. We used to bury like 3 kegs in a beach we had half Fridays and go drink them all between like 25 of us. And there were some big drinkers. And anyhow, one of those 2 or 3 keg parties, and it's like, oh, we were up in Santa Monica, and I had to drive down to Newport Beach in the convertible, and it was traffic the whole freaking whatever 110 miles it was, going 10 miles an hour. I don't know, stop and go. But I got there, and I was still drunk as a skunk, and my dad was like, what the fuck am I with that? And they just, helped me and sent me to fall asleep on the floor where I slept when I lived there. And we had planned to go to Mexico in the morning to go buy my conga drums. Right. And so, like, I get woken up pre-dawn. My dad's got the car ready, and I got my money, and I thought I'd thrown my brand new, whatever they were for Birkenstocks back then, $200. I don't remember what the fuck they were. But it was like, it was more than a day's work at $5 an hour to buy a pair of Birkenstocks back then. $8 an hour, whatever you were making. And so, my dad's fully dressed to the preppy tees and khaki shorts and plaid top and nicely trimmed hair. And he wakes me up and throws me in the car. And I thought I'd thrown my sandals in the boot. And we drive down there. I'm asleep most of the way, and we get to Mexico, and we get out to go walking around looking for a music shop to find my conga drums. And we realize, like, oh, I only got 1 sandal. Damn. So we got to start out negotiating for a pair of Huarache sandals, right? And we grew up wearing these sandals. They're basically tire sole with a woven leather top, and they're the most comfortable freaking thing. And so we head in for looking to find this shop to find some sandals, and they're usually $7 back then, but it was like $20-$30 every store he went into. My dad's the master haggler, and you couldn't get anyone to haggle down, and they're just looking at him and his preppy clothes, and they're looking at me with bare feet. They're like, dude, I'm gonna get top dollar from this rich guy for a pair of shoes. So dad says, go wait around the corner, Alex. And I go around the corner, and he's able to get 3 pairs for $21 while I'm standing on the corner barefoot, just passing the time. There's the peatone, right? And so there's hustle and bustle going on all over the place. But the peatone these are people who just do whatever they can to get by, right? Poor man. And there's usually their orphan children and stuff. And so life is kind of harsh down there. Dad used to show us like the cardboard houses people lived in and give us respect and appreciation for the blessings in our life. And so this guy's entire life was, let's see if I can even show this. I was going to read, I'd written this all out last time I was in jail. Can you see this guy? This is my peatone friend. He's selling hats for a living. He's got a cart. He's got some music playing. We're sitting there waiting at a corner. He's waiting for the red light to cross the street. And I'm standing there barefoot. And that's what he saw was my bare feet, right? We've already shown 2 different perceptions of my bare feet. But this guy, he turns down the music and he looks at me and he props up his stick under his cart and he pulls out a pack of cigarettes and he hands one to me and takes one himself and he lights mine and lights his. And, thank you. Why you give me a cigarette? And tengo poquito de español, so I'm talking to him in Spanish. But he's like, oh, señor, you are poorer than I am. You have no shoes. And that's, this is a short one. It's been 20 minutes, and that pretty much lays out the entire premise I wanted to say today. It's like you pick up a flower and say, oh, this is not what, but we don't know exactly. That man had absolutely no idea that I was the son of a wealthy man who had just been being a belligerent idiot. Down in Mexico, there's no broken glass, so you can walk around barefoot because people are so poor they recycle all the bottles, right? Walking around barefoot in Pasadena, it's a whole different set of why you can walk barefoot. It's super affluent, and there's street cleaners out there making a living sweeping the sidewalks every day. Anyhow, I really that was kind of what I wanted to hit on. It's a nice short one today, I guess. Only preppies wore shirts with, yeah. I am a chameleon. You should see me when I put my $1,000 suit on. I actually went before the Senate House with my $1,000 suit on, and not quite this big of a beard, but hello beard. Oh, Z3 Grey Gold. Yeah, I want to encourage everybody. Go ahead and what does it take? I got 6 sandals and only 2 feet. No, I got several siblings, right? And I still I pay $40. I think they are now. I'll buy them off the internet, and they have a shredded tire sole. They're still pretty awesome. You know, those. I guess we can go back a little bit into my preaching on where we have all these seeds, you know, and if Mel Frank or Ed or whoever it was that took that bag seed and turned it in, everybody did that back in the day, right? That's how it all started. It takes work, right? And so true breeding requires literally going on and doing those things. And yeah, we got to make a living, right? So you got to do stuff to either have mass capital backing you up in laboratories and labor, which I was that close to. I'm really not even looking for yet, but they told me I was going to have a 20-acre greenhouse with 90 laborers and access to laboratories and everything. It was my last proposition that was given to me 2.5 years ago, whatever. They paid me in December, right? So that'd be awesome. I don't have that, so I'm doing what I can with the space I have and the abilities I got, right? And those aren't, my stuff's not in a system. It's not going to be in a system anytime soon. So that system really narrows down the groupthink of what we're talking about when we're talking about this plant. And we see people saying, hey, we've really got a lot of other things that aren't in your system over here in Africa, all over the place, that we're still growing, and it still has these properties. Yeah, I kind of wanted to, I don't know how to do this stuff here. I need a microphone, I guess. And I was recording melting snow yesterday. It's freezing up finally. We've been super warm, but it sounds so nice to listen to. I don't have the channel up. I'll let you all know when it comes up. Yeah, don't do the brown acid. That was before my time. Thanks. I did, though. It was a 4-way window pane, and there was 2.5 of them. My first night enjoying the lysergic acid diethylamide at the Grateful Dead concert, and the combination of everything. Who is this dude? I'm a nobody. How you doing, Florida Nug? Let's shout out before I say goodnight. James Winter, Cameron Muzzy. Shout out to Loyalty Organics. James Winter, Shredder 0911. Florida Nugs. Now you know me. Nug Champa, Loyalty, Bien Patio, Buddha Boy again. What's up? And Sam Heads, Chitter Bob in the house. Cool. I'm gonna shut her down. That's a 25-minute show. Peace out, folks.